Imagine for a moment the sensation of being trapped in a constant cycle of pain and renewal, as if each new phase of life brings with it not only new opportunities, but also new sufferings. This feeling of repetition and uncertainty is something many of us face, in one way or another. In Buddhism, this experience is symbolized by the Wheel of Dharma, also known as Samsara, the unending cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The Wheel of Dharma is a potent image that invites us to reflect on the forces that propel us through existence. It is not just a metaphor, but a spiritual map that guides us in the quest for understanding the cycles that govern our lives. According to Buddhism, everything we experience, our joys, sorrows, challenges, and triumphs, is tied to this cycle, and it is through spiritual awakening that we can step off this wheel. The wheel itself is composed of 6 realms of existence, which encompass everything from lower life forms to higher planes of consciousness. However, regardless of what realm our current existence is in, the cycle continues. This unending cycle, according to Buddha's teachings, is sustained by 3 main forces: ignorance, attachment, and aversion. These mental poisons trap us in samsara, causing suffering and preventing true peace. To those looking from the outside, it may seem that the cycle of life is inevitable, a force of nature over which we have no control. But Buddhism offers a radically different perspective. The Wheel of Dharma is not an endless sentence. In fact, Buddhism teaches that there is a way to interrupt this wheel, to find a path leading to liberation. Enlightenment, or the state of a Nirvana, is the key to escaping this cycle. But before we understand how we can escape, we need to recognize what holds us back. The cycle of the Dharma Wheel is deeply rooted in our everyday experience. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to seek pleasures and avoid suffering. However, this relentless pursuit creates bonds that keep us tied to samsara. Every action we perform has consequences, and these consequences drag us from one existence to another, endlessly. Buddha, after his own journey in search of understanding, realized that the true cause of our imprisonment lies in the way we perceive reality. Through deep meditation and conscious practice, he discovered that the path to liberation involves a radical transformation of the mind. To escape from the Wheel of Dharma, we need to awaken to the impermanent nature of life and break the cycle of desires and aversions that dominate us. The very symbol of the Dharma Wheel teaches us about the transience of all things. The circle, with its various parts, reminds us that life is a continuous flow of change. Nothing stays the same for long, and it is this truth that can set us free. By accepting impermanence and the transient nature of all things, we begin to untie the knots that bind us to samsara. In the pursuit of this understanding, Buddhism offers not only a theory, but a practical set of tools to help us escape from the Wheel of Dharma. From the earliest lessons of the morality and wisdom, to the more advanced stages of the meditation and a mental discipline, the path to liberation is accessible to all who truly seek it. But perhaps the most intriguing question is, why should we want to escape? What is so undesirable about life that would make us seek liberation from its cycles? The answer is simple: suffering. The Wheel of Dharma, as it spins, repeatedly exposes us to the suffering inherent in existence. Our bodies age, our minds get disturbed, and the world around us is constantly changing. Thus, by escaping from this wheel, we also escape from perpetual suffering. However, the Wheel of Dharma is not just a symbol of pain. For those who understand it deeply, it also becomes an opportunity. Each cycle is a chance to learn, grow, and get closer to enlightenment. The wheel turns, but with each turn, there is a new possibility of awakening. It is this awakening that leads us to the final liberation. A liberation that not only means escaping from pain, but also achieving a deep and lasting peace. This journey of discovery is what makes Buddhism so transformative. It challenges us to look at the cycle of life in a new way, not as an inevitable burden, but as an opportunity for transformation. The Wheel of Dharma invites us to tread the path of enlightenment, to seek the truth behind the apparent reality, and to finally find peace. The essence of samsara, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, is one of the central concepts in Buddhism. For many, the idea of rebirth may sound strange, but in the Buddhist context, this is the basic reality of existence. Samsara is the endless cycle that we traverse repeatedly, from one form of life to another, carrying with us the marks of past actions, both good and bad. Each birth brings with it the continuity of a past, shaped by karma, and the promise of a future, also conditioned by our present actions. Buddhists believe that there are 6 realms in which we can be reborn. These realms are not merely physical places, but states of existence that reflect our level of consciousness and the weight of actions accumulated over several lives. The cycle of samsara, therefore, is not linear. It's a wheel that carries us to different experiences, each marked by varying degrees of suffering and pleasure. At the center of this cycle is the human realm, considered one of the most precious. Although human experiences are filled with challenges and sufferings, it is precisely in this realm that the opportunity to awaken and achieve enlightenment is most accessible. The other realms, such as those of gods, and demigods, may seem more desirable as they offer great pleasure and power, but they also come with the trap of complacency, causing beings there to forget the transience of life and the need to seek liberation. On the other hand, realms such as those of animals, hungry ghosts, and hellish beings are characterized by intense suffering and ignorance, making spiritual practice almost impossible. The beings in these realms are dominated by survival instincts, uncontrollable desires, or extreme pain, which obstructs the perception of truth. Nevertheless, Buddhism teaches that everyone, at some point, has experienced life in each of these realms, and we can return to them at any time, depending on the karma we have accumulated. The concept of rebirth in Buddhism is often misunderstood. Contrary to popular belief, it is not the personal self that moves from one life to another. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, a momentary construct that arises and disappears at each instant. What continues through lives is the stream of consciousness, which carries with it the impressions of past actions, shaping the next rebirth. It is this continuity of consciousness that determines where and how we are reborn. These accumulated actions, known as karma, are the driving force behind the cycle of rebirth. Every action, thought, or word we emit leaves a mark on the consciousness, and these marks manifest as the circumstances and challenges we face in future lives. Karma is not a simple reward or punishment, but a natural law of cause and effect, where each experience is a direct result of past actions. Within this cycle of samsara, death is not the end, but merely a transition to a new form of life. The moment of death, however, is crucial, as the mental state in which we die can directly influence the next rebirth. Spiritual practice. During life, especially meditation and the cultivation of compassion and wisdom, aims to prepare the mind for this moment, ensuring that the next rebirth occurs under conditions more favorable to the pursuit of enlightenment. One of the most disturbing issues of the samsara cycle is the suffering inherent in all forms of existence. Even in the highest realms, where pleasure can last for millennia, the wheel of rebirth eventually spins again, bringing with it pain and impermanence. This suffering, known as Dukkha, is the defining characteristic of samsara. No matter where we are reborn, the reality of suffering follows us, whether in the form of physical pain, emotional losses, or even the simple dissatisfaction with life's imperfection. For Buddhists, the cycle of samsara is not something to be desired or celebrated. The true goal is liberation from this cycle, to escape the wheel and achieve the state of Nirvana, where suffering finally ceases. The cycle of life, death, and rebirth is seen as a prison, held by the chains of desire, ignorance, and aversion. It is only by breaking these chains, through spiritual awakening, that we can stop spinning on the wheel and experience true peace. However, escaping from samsara is not a simple task. It requires will, discipline, and wisdom. And most people spend countless lives trying, unsuccessfully, to achieve this goal. Even those who dedicate their lives to spiritual practice may take many incarnations to reach full awakening. But Buddhism teaches us that every little progress we make, every act of kindness or understanding we cultivate, brings us closer to the end of the cycle. The idea of rebirth, for many, might seem discouraging. The prospect of repeating the same experiences of pain and struggle can bring about a feeling of despair. However, it's important to remember that the path to liberation is always present. Even though we are bound to the cycle of samsara, we also have the ability to transform it. Each life we live offers us the opportunity to advance on the spiritual path, to accumulate merits and wisdom, and to draw closer to enlightenment. Ultimately, the cycle of samsara teaches us a profound lesson about the nature of life and reality. It shows us that as long as we remain attached to our illusions and desires, we are doomed to repeat the same patterns of suffering. But, by seeking truth and cultivating compassion and wisdom, we can break this cycle and find true peace. The root of Buddhist teaching lies in a simple, yet profound realization. Suffering is an inherent part of existence. This reality is central to understanding the wheel of Dharma and the cycle of samsara. But Buddhism doesn't stop there. It also offers a path to understand the origin of suffering, and more importantly, how to overcome it. This understanding is encapsulated in the Four Noble Truths, which form the basis of Buddha's doctrine and pave the way for liberation. The first noble truth is the truth of our suffering. Dukkha. Buddha declared that life in its essence is permeated by suffering. From birth to death, we are constantly confronted with experiences of pain, loss, and frustration. Even moments of joy are fleeting and transient, inevitably leading to new forms of dissatisfaction. This dissatisfaction, or dukkha, is present in all aspects of life, from minor daily irritations to major tragedies. Understanding suffering in its entirety is crucial, because we often ignore or try to escape from this reality. However, to escape from the cycle of samsara, it is first necessary to accept the unsatisfactory nature of all existence. Buddhism teaches that suffering is not a punishment or a fate, but an inherent characteristic of the human condition, and recognizing this is the first step to transcending this cycle. The second noble truth talks about the cause of suffering. According to Buddha, suffering is born from desire, or attachment. We are constantly driven to seek pleasure, to cling to things, people, and ideas, in the hope of finding permanent happiness. But, as all things are impermanent, these desires can never be fully satisfied, leading to constant frustration. Furthermore, we have an aversion to what causes us pain, which also generates suffering. Desire and attachment are like chains that keep us bound to the wheel of Dharma. We crave things that are transient, and when they disappear, as they inevitably do, we feel the weight of loss. For instance, the attachment to a relationship that doesn't last, the desire for eternal youth that fades away, or the longing for status and material goods that never bring true satisfaction. This dynamic keeps us trapped in the cycle of rebirth, perpetuating suffering in each new life. Here comes the third noble truth, which offers profound relief. There is an end to suffering. This is a central promise of Buddhism. The cycle of suffering and rebirth can be interrupted. By letting go of attachment, by overcoming desire and aversion, it is possible to reach a state of deep peace, known as Nirvana. This state of liberation is not a kind of paradise, but a condition in which the fire of desires is extinguished, and with it, suffering disappears. Nirvana is the definitive break from the cycle of samsara. Upon achieving this state, we no longer reincarnate, as there are no more desires to be fulfilled or karmas to be reaped. It is the state of total liberation, where the ego dissolves and the true nature of reality is finally perceived. But reaching nirvana is not simple. It requires discipline, wisdom, and constant practice. However, Buddhism teaches that this state is within reach of anyone who follows the correct path. And this is where we come to the fourth noble truth, the path leading to the end of suffering. Buddha, in his infinite compassion, not only showed us the nature of suffering, but also offered a clear path to transcend this condition. This path is known as the Eightfold Path, a set of practices and principles that guide us towards awakening. The Eightfold Path will be discussed in more detail later, but it involves aspects such as right morality, diligent effort, meditation, and the development of wisdom. This path is, in essence, the Buddhist answer to the wheel of Dharma. While we are trapped in the cycle of samsara, ruled by desire and illusions, the Eightfold Path offers us an escape route. It is not just a set of rules, but a practical guide that, when followed, transforms our mind and our heart, progressively leading us to enlightenment. An interesting feature of the Four Noble Truths is that they are not dogmas, but rather truths that can be verified through personal experience. Buddha did not ask his followers to blindly believe in his words, but to investigate these truths in their own lives. When we start to observe the world around us with attention, we realize how suffering arises, how it relates to our desires and attachments, and how it is possible to start dissolving these chains. By deeply understanding the Four Noble Truths, we begin to see the wheel of Dharma more clearly. It is not just about a relentless cycle of rebirths, but about an opportunity for learning and liberation. Each moment of suffering we face can be seen as a chance for awakening, to better understand the nature of reality, and to get closer to the end of the cycle. The recognition of the Four Noble Truths is what empowers us to act consciously. Instead of being dragged by the karma of past lives and by incessant desires, we begin to take control of our actions and decisions. This, in turn, weakens the cycle of samsara, making it less imperative in our lives. With this foundation, we are ready to move towards the next stage, the Eightfold Path. This is the set of practices that enables us to put into action the understanding of the Four Noble Truths and finally break the wheel of Dharma. Now that we understand the root of suffering through the Four Noble Truths, it's time to explore the path Buddha offered to escape the cycle of samsara and achieve final liberation. This path is known as the Eightfold Path, a set of 8 interconnected practices that guide us towards Nirvana. The Eightfold Path is not just a simple set of rules, but a practical guide to living consciously and wisely, promoting well-being and liberation from suffering. The first element of the Eightfold Path is right view. Having a right view means understanding the true nature of reality, particularly the nature of suffering, its cause, and how to overcome it. This involves a deep understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Without this clear view, it is impossible to follow the path of liberation. The right view is like the light that illuminates the path. Without it, we walk blindly, repeating the same mistakes, and remaining trapped in the cycle of samsara. Next, we have the right intention, which is directly linked to right view. Right intention refers to the development of a genuine motivation to follow the spiritual path. It is the commitment to leave behind desire, aversion, and ignorance, and to cultivate detachment, loving kindness, and compassion. Without a pure intention, actions lose focus, and progress on the path to liberation becomes difficult. This intention guides us to act in accordance with principles that promote inner peace and the well-being of others. The right speech is the third element of the Eightfold Path and refers to the conscious use of words. In Buddhism, speech is of great importance, as it can both create harmony and cause suffering. Right speech involves avoiding lies, gossip, malicious talk, and useless words. Instead, we should speak honestly, kindly, and constructively. What we say not only affects others, but also reflects and strengthens the state of our own mind. Thus, controlling speech is an essential step in cultivating a peaceful mind and a harmonious life. The fourth step is right action. This principle guides us to act ethically and compassionately. Right action involves avoiding harm to other beings, abstaining from violence, theft, and improper sexual conduct. More than that, it involves doing good, cultivating actions that bring benefits to others and promote harmony in the world. Each action we perform has an impact on our karma, and through the practice of right action, we begin to purify our mind and our intentions, preparing ourselves for liberation. The right livelihood is the fifth element and instructs us to earn a living in an ethical way. Buddhism teaches that the work we do must be honest and not cause suffering to other beings. This means avoiding occupations that involve exploitation, violence, or dishonesty. When we engage in work that is in harmony with ethical principles, we contribute to a more just society and also purify our own path to Nirvana. The next step is right effort. Right effort is related to the cultivation of the mind. It teaches us to apply energy in a wise and directed manner, striving to abandon harmful mental states and develop healthy mental states. This involves preventing negative thoughts from arising, cultivating positive qualities such as loving kindness, and strengthening the mind with virtues that support spiritual progress. Right effort requires discipline and focus, because without continuous effort, the mind easily reverts to old habits that perpetuate the cycle of suffering. The seventh element of the Eightfold Path is right mindfulness. Mindfulness. This is one of the most important aspects of modern Buddhist practice. Right mindfulness invites us to be fully present in each moment, observing reality with clarity, without judgment or distraction. By practicing mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without clinging to them. Over time, this practice allows us to develop a deep understanding of impermanence and the interdependent nature of all things, helping to dissolve the attachment and ignorance that keep us bound to samsara. Finally, we have the right concentration, which refers to the cultivation of a focused and stable mind through meditation. Right concentration assists us in developing a mental state of profound calm and clarity, where the mind is not disturbed by distractions or worries. It is in this state of concentration that the deepest perceptions about the nature of reality can emerge. Over time, this practice leads to the wisdom necessary to transcend the cycle of birth and death. Each of the 8 elements of the Eightfold Path is interconnected, functioning like gears that move the mind towards liberation. They are not steps that need to be followed linearly, but practices that should be cultivated simultaneously and in a balanced way. For example, the practice of mindfulness helps maintain right speech, right action, and even right effort. Similarly, right view guides all other practices, ensuring that our efforts are always aligned with the truth about suffering and liberation. Following the Eightfold Path is not an easy task. It requires dedication, self-awareness, and patience. However, those who persist find that over time, the mind becomes more stable, attachments weaken, and suffering decreases. The Eightfold Path is not just a means to achieving Nirvana. It is also a lifestyle that promotes peace, compassion, and balance in the here and now. The beauty of the Eightfold Path is that it can be practiced in any context. It doesn't matter where we are or what we do, we can always apply these principles to our daily lives. By cultivating right view, right intention, and the other practices, we begin to transform not only our mind, but also our actions and interactions with the world. Thus, the path of liberation becomes a present reality, accessible to all who dedicate themselves to follow it. As we walk down this path, we begin to perceive the wheel of Dharma spinning in a different way. We are no longer dragged along by it unconsciously, but instead become conscious observers, capable of wisely choosing our actions and intentions. Gradually, the chains that kept us bound to the wheel begin to weaken, and the possibility of liberation becomes more real with each passing day. At the heart of the Samsara cycle is an invisible yet powerful force driving the wheel of Dharma, karma. To understand the cycles of life, death, and rebirth, it is essential to comprehend the role of karma, the law of cause and effect that governs all actions. In Buddhism, karma is not seen as a system of rewards and punishments, but as a natural law, akin to gravity, that links a being's actions to the results they experience, whether in this life or future lives. Karma is generated by every thought, word, and action we carry out. Each choice we make, whether conscious or unconscious, leaves a mark on our consciousness, a sort of energetic impression that can blossom later, shaping the circumstances of our lives. Good actions, those that promote harmony, compassion, and wisdom, generate good karma, leading to positive outcomes. Bad actions, based on desire, hatred, or ignorance, generate bad karma, resulting in future suffering and difficulties. The concept of karma can be seen as the glue that keeps the wheel of Dharma spinning. It is the energy that propels us from one life to another, connecting our pasts with our futures. According to Buddhism, no rebirth is random. Everything we experience is a direct result of the karma accumulated over past lives. Whether we are born into a situation of privilege or poverty, health or illness, peace or conflict, all these conditions are reflections of the karma we have generated. An important part of understanding karma is that it does not act immediately. Not all actions generate immediate results. Some karmic seeds may take entire lifetimes to mature. This explains why, sometimes, good people seem to suffer, or bad people seem to prosper. Karma operates in a complex way, with different actions yielding different fruits over several existences. This means that the current circumstances of our life are the result of a vast network of past actions, some of which may date back to many previous lives. Karma is also a neutral force. It does not have a punitive or rewarding intention, but simply follows the law of cause and effect. When an action based on anger is carried out, suffering inevitably arises. Similarly, when an act of compassion is performed, it brings with it peace and harmony. Karma reflects the natural consequences of our actions, and understanding this law allows us to take greater control over our lives and our spiritual destiny. Moreover, karma teaches us a powerful lesson about personal responsibility. In Buddhism, there is no external entity that judges or decides our fates. There are no gods who reward or punish. It is we ourselves who shape our life experience, moment by moment, through the choices we make. This places in our hands the power to transform our lives. By becoming aware of karma, we start to realize that our actions in the present determine our future experiences. If we want liberation, we must cultivate actions and thoughts that lead us in that direction. A central point in the discussion about karma is that it is not immutable. Although past karma can influence our current life, Buddhism teaches that karma can be transformed. This is possible through conscious practice and spiritual development. By following the Eightfold Path and cultivating qualities such as compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness, we begin to purify the accumulated negative karma and generate positive karma, which moves us in the direction of liberation. That is to say, karma is not a prison, but a tool that can be used for our own spiritual evolution. Karma also teaches us about the interconnection of all things. Our actions don't just affect us, but everyone around us as well. When we perform a good deed, we spread the seeds of goodness to all those surrounding us, creating a positive impact in the world. Similarly, negative actions create waves of suffering that affect the community around us. This understanding of interdependence encourages us to act with more care and compassion, knowing that everything we do resonates in the fabric of existence. In addition to individual actions, karma also operates at a collective sayaos level. Communities, nations, and even the planet as a whole generate karma through the collective actions of their members. For instance, a society that practices violence or exploitation generates karma that could result in conflicts or disasters in the future. On the other hand, a community that promotes peace and justice creates a favorable karmic field for the flourishing of harmony. This reminds us of the importance of acting consciously, not only on an individual level, but also as part of a larger collective. However, one of the deepest lessons that karma offers us is about impermanence. Just as our actions can shape the future, we must also remember that nothing is permanent. Current circumstances, whether they are of pleasure or pain, are temporary and constantly changing. By understanding the transitory nature of all things, we can detach ourselves from outcomes and focus on correct practice, without set expectations about what the future will bring. The ultimate goal, however, is to interrupt the cycle of birth and death, freeing oneself from the need to accumulate karma, whether positive or negative. As we cultivate an understanding of karma and its influence on our lives, we begin to take a more conscious stance towards our actions. This prepares us for the liberation from the cycle of samsara. When we purify our karma and cease to create new attachments and desires, the wheel finally stops spinning, and we achieve the state of nirvana, the supreme peace beyond suffering. For those who tread the spiritual path, karma should not be feared, but understood as an opportunity for growth. Every action we perform is a chance to shape a brighter future and move toward enlightenment. Through mindful practice, we not only purify past karma, but also free ourselves from the need to continue spinning in the wheel of rebirth. True freedom is not just about avoiding suffering, but about completely transcending the cycle of birth and death. Amidst the complexity of the samsara cycle and the continuous influence of karma, there is a promise of ultimate liberation: Nirvana. For Buddhists, Nirvana is the state of supreme peace and total liberation from suffering. When we achieve Nirvana, we not only escape the endless cycles of birth and death, but also break all the chains of desire, attachment, and ignorance that keep the wheel of Dharma turning. It is the final destination of all who follow the path of enlightenment. The word Nirvana in Sanskrit literally means extinction or cessation, referring to the extinction of the fires of desire, aversion, and ignorance. These three poisons are responsible for keeping beings trapped in samsara, creating the suffering that permeates all forms of life. When these fires are extinguished, the mind reaches a state of serenity and clarity that is beyond the duality of pleasure and pain. But what exactly is Nirvana? In essence, Nirvana is not a place, like a paradise or heaven, but a state of consciousness. It is a state in which the mind is completely free from all forms of conditioning. There is no more birth, aging, sickness, or death. There is no more suffering. When a person achieves Nirvana, they are no longer subject to the cycle of rebirth. They are free from the wheel of Dharma. Achieving Nirvana is the ultimate realization of wisdom, prajna. To reach this state, it is necessary to perceive the true nature of reality. This involves deeply understanding the impermanence of all things, the insubstantial nature of the self, and the interdependence of all phenomena. This realization is not just intellectual, but experiential. It arises from a deep spiritual practice, where the mind frees itself from the illusions that usually obscure it. The spiritual practice leading to Nirvana is rigorous, but accessible to all who are willing to follow it diligently. It begins with the understanding of the Four Noble Truths and follows the Eightfold Path. The practice of meditation is fundamental in this process, especially meditation that cultivates mindfulness and right concentration. Through meditation, the mind becomes calmer, more focused, and capable of perceiving truth beyond the distractions of everyday life. As we progress on the path, we begin to experience what is known as insights. These are moments when the true nature of reality reveals itself. Insights about impermanence, anicca, the insubstantiality of self, anatta, and suffering, dukkha, start to emerge. These insights are not mere reflections, but profound shifts in the way we perceive the world. Each of these insights brings us closer to the state of nirvana. But nirvana is not a state that can be forced. It naturally arises when the mind is purified. Throughout practice, we gradually eliminate mental impurities, such as desire, aversion, and ignorance. Nirvana is the result of this complete purification. When the mind is free from these impurities, it reaches a state of total freedom, with no more attachments, fears, or illusions. For many, the idea of achieving nirvana may seem unattainable, something reserved for monks or highly advanced practitioners. However, Buddhism teaches that all beings have the innate ability to reach nirvana. Although the path may be long and arduous, each step towards enlightenment is significant. Even small daily practices of compassion, meditation, and mindfulness move us closer to liberation. Furthermore, the process of achieving nirvana does not need to be seen as a solitary task. Buddhism emphasizes the importance of the sangha, or spiritual community, that supports us in practice. Being surrounded by other practitioners helps to maintain discipline, share wisdom, and offer encouragement along the journey. The sangha is an essential part of the path, providing a safe space for growth and learning. When a person finally achieves nirvana, the cycle of rebirth ceases. They are no longer reborn into any of the realms of samsara. This state of ultimate liberation is known as parinirvana, which occurs after the death of the physical body of the one who has achieved nirvana. The Buddha, for example, achieved nirvana during his life by reaching enlightenment, and upon death, entered the state of parinirvana, a state beyond the understanding of the cycle of birth and death. Enlightenment. Bodhi is the path to Nirvana, and this enlightenment does not come from outside. It arises from within each of us, through the practice of the kind. Eightfold Path. We purify our mind and awaken to the truth that suffering can be overcome. Enlightenment, therefore, is not just the liberation from suffering, but also the realization of our true nature. There are many examples in Buddhist history of masters who have achieved enlightenment beyond Buddha. They serve as inspiration, showing that enlightenment is possible even under the most difficult circumstances. These masters, known as Arhat in Theravada Buddhism and Bodhisattvas in Mahayana Buddhism, dedicated their lives to the path of enlightenment and served as guides for others. In Mahayana Buddhism in particular, the ideal is not only to achieve personal nirvana, but to help all beings reach liberation, following the path of the Bodhisattva. The path to escape from the wheel of Dharma may seem challenging, but each practice, each moment of mindfulness, each act of compassion moves us towards nirvana. By cultivating these qualities, we are not only liberating ourselves from personal suffering, but also contributing to the creation of a more peaceful and harmonious world. In the end, the path to nirvana is a journey that begins with a simple step: the recognition of suffering and the conscious choice to overcome it. Buddhism teaches us that this choice is always within our reach, and that liberation is not just a distant goal, but something that can be experienced in each moment as we free ourselves from illusions and awaken to the truth. When we talk about liberation from the cycle of samsara and the state of enlightenment, it's natural that the figure of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, is the first to come to our minds. He is the most prominent example of a being who, after an intense journey of search and self-improvement, managed to achieve total liberation, nirvana. However, he is not the only one. Throughout history, many spiritual masters have followed the path of the Buddha and, with their compassion and wisdom, reached enlightenment, becoming guides for those who also seek liberation. The story of Siddhartha Gautama begins like that of any other human being, trapped in the cycle of birth and death. Born into a noble family, shielded from the suffering of the world by his father, Siddhartha lived in luxury and comfort until the age of 29. However, upon leaving his palace and witnessing the realities of old age, disease and death, he was deeply impacted by the inevitability of suffering. It was at this moment that Siddhartha decided to renounce his life of privileges and seek a solution to the suffering that all beings experience. Buddha's search was arduous. He went through different masters and extreme practices, including self-mortification, believing that extreme austerity could bring enlightenment. However, after nearly destroying himself physically, Siddhartha realized that this was not the way. He then found what he called the middle way, a path of balance between hedonism and self-mortification. It was under the Bodhi tree, in deep meditation, that Siddhartha finally achieved nirvana and understood the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, offering the world a clear map to liberation. After his enlightenment, Buddha dedicated the rest of his life to teaching. He knew that his knowledge could not be kept only to himself. His compassion drove him to share the path so that all beings could escape from the cycle of samsara. His teachings are still followed by millions of people around the world, and his journey serves as the most powerful example of what is possible when one commits to the path of truth. However, the Buddha was not the only enlightened being. In Theravada Buddhism, those who attain nirvana by following the path of the Buddha are called arhats. These practitioners have not only broken the cycle of birth and death, but have also dedicated their lives to teaching and guiding others. A famous example is Sariputta, one of Buddha's main disciples, known for his profound wisdom. Sariputta achieved enlightenment through the direct understanding of Buddha's teachings and subsequently helped other monks and practitioners to advance on their own spiritual paths. Another enlightened disciple was a Moggallana, who stood out for his skills in deep meditation and supernatural powers. He also achieved enlightenment and used his wisdom to assist his fellow practitioners. These arhats represent the example that enlightenment is not something reserved for one person alone, but can be achieved by anyone who follows the path with sincerity and dedication. In Mahayana Buddhism, the concept of enlightenment is expanded with the figure of the Praya, Bodhisattva, a being who, despite having the ability to reach Nirvana, chooses to remain in the samsara cycle to help other beings achieve liberation. Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, is one of the most well-known examples. Avalokiteshvara is revered in many Buddhist traditions as a being who hears the cries of the world and is constantly working to alleviate the suffering of all beings. It is believed that this Bodhisattva can manifest in various forms to assist those who need his help. Another important Bodhisattva is Manjushri. Associated with wisdom, he is often depicted with a sword that cuts through ignorance, symbolizing the power of wisdom to dispel the illusions that keep us trapped in samsara. Manjushri is seen as the supreme example of enlightened wisdom, and his representations are revered by those seeking clarity and discernment in their lives. Mahayana Buddhism teaches that all beings have the potential to become bodhisattvas, and many schools of this tradition encourage practitioners to adopt the Bodhisattva vow. This vow is a commitment to work for the benefit of all beings, even if it means delaying one's own entry into Nirvana. Through this act of altruistic compassion, bodhisattvas embody the highest ideal of service and sacrifice, offering a path not just for personal liberation, but for the collective liberation of all beings. Besides the bodhisattvas and arhats, there are stories of enlightened masters in various Buddhist traditions throughout the centuries. One example is the Japanese Zen master, Dogen, who founded the Soto Zen school. He is famous for his teachings on seated meditation, zazen, and his emphasis on daily practice as the very path to enlightenment. For Dogen, the practice of meditation was not merely a means to an end, but a direct expression of the enlightened state. His work continues to influence practitioners worldwide. Another important example is the Tibetan master, Milarepa, one of the most revered figures in Tibetan Buddhism. After a difficult early life marked by negative actions, Milarepa turned to spiritual practice with great determination. He spent many years in retreat in the mountains, practicing intense meditation, until he finally achieved enlightenment. Milarepa is remembered for his perseverance and for demonstrating that even those with a turbulent past can achieve enlightenment through sincere repentance and diligent practice. These examples of enlightened masters remind us that the path to Nirvana is not easy, but it is also not impossible. Each of these beings faced their own challenges and overcame the limitations of their circumstances to achieve liberation. They show us that, regardless of where we start, the potential for enlightenment lies within each of us. Following the example of these masters does not only mean trying to imitate their actions, but deeply understanding the principles that guided their lives: compassion, wisdom, and diligent effort. They teach us that the path to liberation is not a journey we can rush, but a continuous practice that requires patience and commitment. And, as we look to these examples, we are inspired to move forward, knowing that enlightenment is possible for all who sincerely seek the truth. The journey we begin with understanding the wheel of Dharma, karma, teachings about suffering, and the path to Nirvana leads us to an essential question. How can these ancient Buddhist teachings be applied to our modern lives? We live in a world very different from the one in which Buddha taught, but the principles he conveyed are timeless and can be adapted to face the challenges we face in the present. Today, many people are in search of purpose, peace, and happiness. However, modern society, with its pressures, technological distractions, and fast-paced lifestyle, often distances us from a deeper connection with ourselves and the world around us. Buddhism offers a response to this modern restlessness through practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and the cultivation of compassion. Mindfulness, for example, has been widely adopted in the West as a tool for managing stress and anxiety. But in Buddhism, it goes far beyond a simple exercise in mental focus. Mindfulness, when practiced continuously, allows us to see the impermanent nature of all things, including our thoughts, emotions, and even the external circumstances that often seem beyond our control. By cultivating mindfulness, we begin to perceive how attachment to what is transient is the root of many of our sufferings. This helps us to live more lightly, accepting the fleeting nature of everything around us. Another valuable teaching that can be applied to modern life is the concept of compassion. We live in an era marked by divisions, whether they be political, economic, or social. The practice of compassion, as taught in Buddhism, encourages us to see beyond our superficial differences and to recognize the interconnection of all beings. When we begin to cultivate compassion for ourselves and others, our interactions become more meaningful and peaceful, and we contribute to a more harmonious world. Buddhist practice reminds us that suffering is an inevitable part of life, but it also teaches us how to deal with this suffering in a healthy and constructive way. In the modern world, where many of us try to avoid suffering at all costs, whether through distractions, consumerism, or other escape mechanisms, Buddha's teachings encourage us to face suffering head-on. By recognizing suffering not as something to be avoided, but as an opportunity for growth and transformation, we begin to develop an internal resilience that allows us to live with greater serenity, regardless of external circumstances. Another aspect of Buddhist teachings that can be very useful in modern life is the wisdom of impermanence. In a world where changes are rapid and often beyond our control, understanding impermanence helps us to accept the transience of life without overly attaching ourselves to outcomes or expectations. This does not mean that we become passive or indifferent, but rather that we learn to navigate the waves of life with greater flexibility and emotional balance. The practice of the Eightfold Path also finds relevance in current times. Many of us face ethical dilemmas at work, in relationships, and in the choices we make daily. The teachings on right speech, right action, and right livelihood provide a moral compass for those seeking to live more in alignment with their values. In a world that often values material success at the expense of integrity, these teachings remind us of the importance of living with the ethics and conscious intention. The concept of karma, in turn, makes us reflect on how our actions, no matter how small, have consequences. In a globalized world, where our consumption choices, attitudes, and behaviors directly impact the environment and other people, karma teaches us that every action counts. Thus, Buddhism invites us to live responsibly, knowing that our choices affect not only our own future, but also that of everyone around us. As we look at modern society, filled with constant stimuli and unending demands, Buddhist teachings offer us a path of simplicity and presence. By slowing down, engaging in meditation practice, and cultivating wisdom, we begin to find a sense of peace that is not dependent on external conditions. This is extremely powerful in a world where so many people seek outside themselves for solutions to their internal problems. Enlightenment, or Nirvana, while it may seem like a distant goal, also has a parallel in modern life. We often think that happiness lies in achieving certain external goals, be it professional success, material wealth, or social status. But as we follow the path of enlightenment, we realize that true peace comes from within, from a deep state of acceptance and freedom from our attachments and desires. This inner awakening, even if it is not complete nirvana, allows us to experience moments of clarity and genuine well-being in everyday life. Furthermore, the examples of the enlightened masters we mentioned earlier, such as Buddha, Avalokiteshvara, Milarepa, and others, offer us inspiration. They show us that, despite challenges and obstacles, it is possible to transcend suffering and find liberation. Their paths remind us that we are not alone in our search for meaning and peace. There is a rich and profound tradition of masters and practitioners who have walked this path before us, and their teachings remain alive, guiding us on our own journey. In the end, what Buddhist teachings show us is that the path to liberation is a conscious choice. Each of us can decide, at any moment, whether we want to remain trapped in cycles of desire and aversion, or whether we want to cultivate the peace and wisdom that liberate us. Spiritual practice is a daily commitment, and although the fruits of this practice may not be immediate, each step brings us closer to liberation. In a world so full of uncertainties, the teachings of the Dharma Wheel, Karma, and the Eightfold Path offer us an anchor, a means to guide us towards peace and purpose. The journey may be long, but as Buddha taught, every little effort towards truth and compassion brings us closer to final liberation. And so, we come to the end of this reflection on the Wheel of Dharma, the cycles of life and death, and the pursuit of enlightenment. May these teachings serve as a light on your own path, guiding you to find peace, purpose, and perhaps the ultimate liberation from suffering. And now, tell me in the comments, how do you see the Wheel of Dharma manifesting in your own life? Share your experiences and insights on how these cycles may be influencing your challenges or your achievements. Remember, we are all together in this journey of awakening, and your story can help others see their own lives more clearly. When we unite in the pursuit of spiritual growth, we collectively manifest more light and wisdom in the world. And don't forget, the next video on your screen will take you even deeper into the understanding of ancient spirituality, the hidden secrets of Nag Hammadi, the truth about creation and spiritual awakening revealed. Uncover the mysteries that the Gnostic texts hold about the creation of the universe and spiritual awakening. Click and continue this journey of knowledge and expansion with mind unfettered.